It's not Paul Manafort alone. There's a lot of Paul Manaforts out there across Washington, D.C., and people right now are feeding at the public trough, ripping off the American taxpayer, breaking all manner of rules, ethics, laws. And so far, they haven't been called to account on it. But what's always been the case is that corruption has worked as an issue in political campaigns, and that to be the Reform Party, to be the good government party, to be the clean government party is a powerful place to be.
That's what a former Republican sounds like. Political strategist Steve Schmidt reacting to the current situation we're watching in Washington after Republican Congressman Chris Collins was arrested and charged with insider trading and lying to the government earlier today. The charges against Collins come as Republicans trying to figure out a game plan, perhaps leading into the midterms in 90 days. Last night's special election in an Ohio district that Trump won by 11 points. Still too close to call, as our network sees it right now. Robert Costa, the Washington Post, who we had on earlier tonight, puts it this way, talking about all of last night's results. Many Republican strategists viewed the results as a dark omen 3 months ahead of Election Day, saying they illustrate the limits of Trump's ability to boost candidates, particularly in suburban areas where the president's popularity has suffered. Even in Republican primaries, securing Trump's endorsement was not a guarantee of electoral success. We are so happy tonight to be joined by both Eugene Robinson, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for The Washington Post, and A.B. Stoddard, veteran Washington journalist, a columnist and associate editor at Real Clear Politics. Eugene, what's happening in the Republican Party? What's happening in the electorate? And is it such a moving target that if I ask you on Monday, your answer could perhaps be different?
Oh, totally. Totally.
I'll wait and ask you then.
I mean, but here we are on Wednesday, and we just had some elections yesterday. So you can say the Republican Party is looking at some substantial losses in the midterm election. They're looking down that barrel. And,
as in no more Speaker Ryan?
Certainly could be. And I think you'd say that's likely now. Likely only lasts for a couple of days in this era, apparently. But right now, you'd have to say that that's likely. Democrats have to close the deal. Right, they have an edge on enthusiasm, and you saw that again last night. Clearly, they have made a whole lot of what should be safe Republican districts competitive, but they got to close the deal. And one way they could fail to do that is being complacent about last night's results. Donald Trump went to that district in Ohio, and it looks like he might have brought the Republican Balderson across the finish line, right? 1,500 votes right now. It's too close to call, so we don't know, but he's ahead by 1,500 votes. And that could have made the difference of those 1,500 votes. You can't doubt that he boosted GOP enthusiasm to some degree in that district. And Democrats should prepare for that. I mean, they have to amp it up, too.
A.B., our friend Eugene is not hyperbolic. He's a level-headed man who I've known for a long time, and yet I'm looking at the headline on his column, Trump's rally rhetoric is going to get somebody killed. And sadly, there's a good chance Eugene may be right. And you combine that speaks to the tone and tenor of our times with all this politics we're seeing. The question to you is, what are Republicans really talking about in cloakrooms and restaurants and homes?
Right. What's interesting is that Troy Balderson, if he won, and it looks like he did, it would have been because of Trump, as Eugene said. And if he lost, it would have been because of Trump. So as Trump comes and rallies, and his supporters love all that stuff about the disgusting fake news and everything he does, really all of that aggressive talk really riles them up, and they enjoy it. So when you're in the House and you're looking to hold the House, and you're at the NRCC, the campaign committee, you're looking at the map, you think that's fine for Donald Trump to go to help Senate Republicans in states he won by landslide margins. He can't go to swing districts in the House that they risk losing, and they need to defend their majority. He's welcome in safe districts, but they aren't the ones that they need to hold.
And those are a moving target, too.
So that's really right. Now there are more.
The definition of safe is
and that's if you look at the Cook Political Report data that Republicans that's making them so nervous. It's that they did a comparison recently from August of 2006 to November, August of 2010 to November. There are more competitive seats this August, and those numbers always grow. And they have it's 53 right now, and they have no idea where it's going to go to November 6th.
Think of the day the president is having today, right? His campaign chairman continues on trial.
Yeah.
His first
deputy campaign director is the star witness.
Is the star witness. His first supporter in Congress is arrested and indicted and arrested today. And they're the election results from last night, which he puts a brave face on. But I'm sure people have explained to him, this really isn't that good, Mr. President. So I think you can anticipate in the next few days he might be on a jag. I think a tweet storm is coming.
Don't forget, somewhere there's an ostrich saying, was it really worth it to kill my brother so that this guy could have a jacket? AB, you're such a nice person. You don't deserve this, but I'm going to read you this Daily Beast quote anyway. Multiple sources with direct knowledge of the situation tell the Daily Beast that Omarosa Manigault Newman, the infamous former Apprentice star who followed Trump into the White House, secretly recorded conversations with the president, conversations she has since leveraged while shopping her forthcoming tell-all book, bluntly titled Unhinged. AB, nice person, level-headed person. What does this say about our time?
What this says about President Trump is that he asked for this. I do not watch The Apprentice, but I am told by people who did that the Omarosa character was the viper, and you didn't mess with her. You mess with the bull, you get the horn. She was not loyal to anybody. She was happy to stir up trouble, and she would turn on you. He let her into the West Wing. She had a nebulous job. No one knew what she did. She recorded him. If this is true, this is what the danger of Trump and Omarosa is they are not in the reputation preservation business. You can't. They're unembarrassable.
I'm sure you never watched. You're really good on this subject.
I don't do reality TV.
Okay.
But think about think about it though. He brought a reality television contestant.
He wanted this.
Yeah.
Into the White House as a senior advisor
I got a
in
better
the
one
West
for
Wing.
you. Think about this. He worked in this building and received a paycheck from this company for 14 years. Eugene Robinson and A.B. Stoddard, our thanks. Terrific conversation. I think she's been sneaking reality television.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.